Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Kvachit Brahmavad Ahikartheshu Graheshu Ramsyan Yatha Vanarah Sutadara Vatsalo Vyavaya Kshana.
Kvachit Brahmavad Aihikartheshu Griheshu Ramsyan Yatha Vanara Sutadar Salo Yavaya Kshana.
Chalo.
Yes, would someone like to read?
Shall I read for you?
Yes, please.
Translation. Just as a monkey jumps from one tree to another, the conditioned soul jumps from one body to another. As the monkey is ultimately captured by the hunter and is unable to get out of captivity, the conditioned soul, being captivated by momentary sex pleasure, becomes attached to different types of bodies and is engaged in family life. Family life affords the conditioned soul a festival of momentary sex pleasure, and thus he is completely unable to get out of the material fetches. Purport. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 11.9.29, Vishaya Khalu Sarvatah Syat, bodily necessities, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, are all very easily available in any form of life. It is stated here that the Vanar, monkey, is very much attracted to sex. Each monkey keeps at least 24 wives, and he jumps from one tree to another to capture the female monkey. Thus, he immediately engages in sexual intercourse. In this way, the monkey's business is to jump from one tree to another and enjoy sex with his wives. The conditioned soul is doing the same thing, transmigrating from one body to another and engaging in sex. He thus completely forgets how to become free from the clutches of material engagement. Sometimes the monkey is captured by a hunter who sells its body to doctors so that its glands can be removed for the benefit of another monkey. All this is going on in the name of economic development and improved sex life. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. जिभारा लालसा जेई इति उति धाय शेषो नरपरायण कृष्ण नहीं पाए. Trying to enjoy this material nature is also subtle sex. So going from one place to another to just enjoy material life, it actually engages our senses more and more. What happens is every time we are moving from one place to another, we are acquiring newer and newer sanskaras. We are getting newer and newer impressions in our mind. And these impressions are subtly becoming cemented. We are not realizing this. We may think, oh, I saw such a beautiful place. I met so many nice people. Actually, all those impressions are getting settled down in our mind. And at the time of death, these sentiments, these subtle impressions will create sentiments, which will take us to our next body. So it is very important that right from the very beginning, as soon as one comes to Krishna consciousness, one tries to get away from, all these kind of sensory stimulations. Everything gets accumulated in the mind. We do not forget anything. We may consciously think that we may have forgotten something, but when some intense pain comes, just as pain of death, then all these memories will come back. And whatever has captivated us, whatever has attracted us the most, that will be the most prominent feeling. And that feeling will take us to our next body. That's why the great sages, they would leave the society as soon as possible. So if we study the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear the story of Narad Muni. And Narad Muni, he says that when his mother passed away, he was in great sorrow. So he left his home and he had heard from the Bhakti Vedantas that one should meditate upon the Lord and one should travel northwards. So he traveled towards the north. He didn't have much idea where to go and what to do, but he traveled northwards. And during his travels, he saw many places. It is mentioned that he passed through towns and villages. He saw mines and farms, but he did not stop anywhere. Now, certainly we can imagine a small child walking. All these places must have been very attractive. But Narad Muni understood that this is not his destination. So he continued to the very north, where he sat down in meditation. So you see, because anything that we see, anything that we are finding attractive is going to create an impression in our mind. So especially as one gets older, towards the age of 50, 45, 50, one should stop, seeing places or meeting too many people. One should focus more on how to leave this body. If one still continues to enjoy his senses, one is bound to suffer, and the suffering would be immense. So this is like monkey, monkey is jumping from one branch to another. But what is the end result? In the end, the monkey is captured by the hunter, and eventually he is killed. So this is what happens to a materialistic person. Jibhara lalasa jai iti uti dhai. Going from one place to another simply to satisfy the tongue, mind, the tongue. So this will eventually lead one to getting another material body where there will be unbound suffering once again. Yeah, any questions or comments? Okay, if you have any questions, just raise your hand. I'll not stop to ask. Text 33. Evam advanya avurundhano mrityu gaj bhaya tamasi giri kandara praye.
Evam
Evam
एवम्
Advanya
अध्वन्य अवरुन्धानो
Dhano
मृत्युगजभया
Mrityu
तमसि
Gajaya Tamasi Giri
गिरिकन्दरप्राये.
Praye.
Praye.
I'll read Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Swami Prabhupada. In this material world, when the conditioned soul forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and does not care for Krishna consciousness, he simply engages in different types of mischievous and sinful activities. He is then subjected to the threefold miseries. And out of fear of the elephant of death, he falls into the darkness found in a mountain cave. But everyone is afraid of death, and however strong a materialistic person may be, when there is disease and old age, one must certainly accept death's notice. The conditioned soul becomes very morose to receive notice of death. His fear is compared to the fear experienced upon entering a dark mountain cave, and death is compared to a great elephant. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhu. See, as old age advances, fear of death also advances. One notices death approaching. One can see when death is approaching. And what is the fear of death? We have discussed previously also. We are always fearful. What will happen to my mother? What will happen to my father? What will happen to my child? What will happen to my wife or husband? Now imagine all these fears coming together at the same time. That is the fear of death. Now, if I tell you the news, your son is in great danger, you'll be immediately worried, oh, my son, someone save my son. Why? Because you fear that, at the last moment, if something happens to your son, you will never be able to see him again. Why do people cry when their loved ones die? Because they know they'll lose this association forever. So please try to understand the psychology. Then you will be able to understand what material life really means. Why do we cry when a mother or a father or a husband or a wife dies? Because we feel, oh, now we are never going to get his or her association. That is one person. If your father dies, at least mother is there. Mother dies, at least wife is there, child is there. At the time of death, it is equivalent to all of these dying at the same time. Because you are dying. And you are going to lose their association. Yet, unfortunately, under the spell of Maya, no one thinks like this. And this is the greatest wonder, according to Yudhishthir Maharaj, that everyone is dying every moment, and yet everyone thinks that he is not going to die. This is how Maya captivates us. That's why people, even at the age of 60 or 70, are investing money, buying properties. No, actually, after the age of 50, one should just shut down everything. One should just focus on advancing spiritually. There are many contaminations to be removed. Therefore, one should chant very carefully and try to acquire anartha nivritti. One should try to get rid of all these anarthas. One should not be running here and there. Okay, now I am 50, 60, now my son is grown up. I have to arrange some investments for him. I have to arrange for his wife, this and that. I mean, this is all nonsense. Because you are just perpetuating this illusion and you will come to great grief. One has to be very, very careful. Text. So this fear is compared to dark soul and death. I mean, dark hole or a dark cave in the forest or in the mountain. And death is compared to an elephant. Wild elephants are extremely dangerous. So when death comes, one tries to run away here and there, and he experiences fear inside a cave. Text 34. क्वचित् चित वाताद्य अनेक दैविक भौतिकात्मीयानां दुःखानां प्रतिनिवारणे अकल्पो दुरंत विषय विषन्न आस्ते.
क्वचित्
चित्ता
चित्तवादाद्यनेक
अनेक दैविक
भौतिकात्मीयानां दुःखानां प्रतिनिवारणे कल्पो दुरन्तविषयक्षन्न आस्ते.
The conditioned soul suffers many miserable bodily conditions, such as being affected by severe cold and strong winds. He also suffers due to the activities of other living beings and due to natural disturbances. When he is unable to counteract them and has to remain in a miserable condition, he naturally becomes very morose because he wants to enjoy material facilities. So this is the difference between spiritual life and material life. Spiritual life means tapasya. Tapa literally means burning. So tapasya meaning, literally burning oneself. So tapasya means voluntarily accepting miseries. So sadhus, they give up home, household life, they give up possessions, they live a very simple life. They do madhukari, begging only from qualified people. The madhukari is not done from rascals. Today we see sadhus are literally begging at the feet of the worst of the demons and then taking their photographs. Oh, I took photograph with a business demon, with a political demon, with an entertainment demon. And sadhus are thinking that they are very good this way. But actually they are the greatest fools. They are going to suffer. Actually, sadhu has got nothing to do with mundane people. So this way the living entity is always suffering. So a sadhu or a great soul voluntarily accepts these sufferings, understanding that this material world is dukhalayam ashashvatam. Krishna is saying, Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukhadukada agamapayino nityas tam stitikshasva bharata. This is Krishna's first instruction in Bhagavad Gita. Tam stitikshasva bharata. Learn to tolerate. So the living entity has, so a person desiring to attain spiritual realization should learn to tolerate all of this. So Srila Madhvacharya gives the explanation of this very verse. He says, Krishna is explaining that the perception of pain and happiness is due to association with the body. The pain and the suffering is associated to the body. For example, if you see outside, the fish is swimming in cold water. It does not feel any discomfort. But a human being, when he jumps into the water, he feels discomfort. Likewise, if a fish is brought out of water into the blazing sun, it will simply die because of suffering. But a human being can stand in the sun and he won't feel discomfort. So this so-called enjoyment and suffering is due to the association with the body. Matra sparshastu kaunteya. So Srila Madhvacharya is explaining Matra sparshas meaning in contact with the material body. So therefore one is suffering. So the whole spiritual process is to give up this bodily conception. You are not that body. The first instruction of Bhagavad Gita. So we have to, so even Lord Brahma is teaching this by his own example. In the second canto of Bhagavatam, we see at the time of creation, Lord Brahma is completely confused. He's seeing darkness all around. He has no idea what is happening. So he receives instruction from the Supreme Lord. Tapa, tapa. Actually, the Lord does not say anything to Lord Brahma first. Not that Lord Brahma is shaking hands with Lord Vishnu in the beginning itself. No. The first instruction the Lord manifests within the heart of Brahma is not even Omkar. The very first instruction is tapa, tapa. Just austerity, austerity. So Brahma goes into deep meditation for 10,000 years. And thus he is able to realize the Supreme. And then the Lord appears in front of him. So when the great grandfather of this universe, Lord Brahma himself has to perform austerity, what to speak of ordinary human beings? Actually, a culture of luxury and enjoyment till the very end is a Malecha culture, animal culture. And by engaging in such a culture, one eventually becomes an animal. Text 35. Kvachin mitho vyavaharan yat kinchid dhanam upayati vitta shathyena.
Mritho vyavaharan yat kinchid dhanam upayati vitta shathyena. Read, Prabhu.
Yes, please.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Swami Prabhupada. Sometimes conditioned souls exchange money, but in due course of time, enmity arises because of cheating. Although there may be a tiny profit, the conditioned souls cease to be friends and become enemies. Purport. As stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.8, Pumsa Striya Mithuni Bhavam Etam Tayor Vito Hridaya Granthim Ahu Atho Griha Kshetra Sutapta Tair Janasya Moham Ayam Aham Nameti. The monkey-like conditioned soul first becomes attached to sex, and when intercourse actually takes place, he becomes more attached. He then requires some material comforts, apartment, house, food, friends, wealth, and so on. In order to acquire these things, he has to cheat others, and this creates enmity even amongst most intimate friends. Sometimes this enmity is created between the conditioned soul and the father or spiritual master. Unless one is firmly fixed in the regulative principles, one may perform mischievous acts, even if one is a member of the Krishna consciousness movement. We therefore advise our disciples to strictly follow the regulative principles. Otherwise, the most important movement for the upliftment of humanity will be hampered due to dissension among its members. Those who are serious about pushing forward this Krishna consciousness movement should remember this and strictly follow the regulative principles so that their minds will not be disturbed. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Enmity. So as we discussed previously also in this chapter, aham mameti, I and mine. As soon as this conception arises, there is bound to be discord. What is mine cannot be yours, and what is yours cannot be mine. So naturally, there is bound to be competition. In fact, if you see, the whole material world is just about competition. So we celebrate these so-called competitions, Wimbledon Championship, World Cup. What is all this? Actually, one very great person was saying once that if you watch a Wimbledon tournament, actually there is one person who is happy and 99 others who are miserable, and we celebrate that misery. So it's all these sporting competitions are nothing but actually celebration of misery. This is material world. Aham mameti, I and mine. So actually, when a devotee, when he takes to bhakti very seriously, he understands that everything belongs to Krishna. Therefore, the tendency to cheat others or the tendency to be the master diminishes. It won't go away quickly. Ashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavad sevaya. Prabhupada writes there, almost completely vanishes. So it's not that it vanishes immediately. It's going to take a long time. But when you start experiencing the holy name, gradually this so-called ambition within the heart starts dissolving. And then Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahatavagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam. So this is the position of holy name. It purifies the heart. So Cheto Darpana Marjanam, what does that mean? Now I'm thinking, oh, I am a big director, I am a big manager, I am a big politician or whatever. But this is all illusion. All illusion, and this will lead to a horrible death. When one engages in deep devotional service, one's heart starts getting purified. Then one can see, yes, that Krishna is protecting me. Actually, Krishna is protecting even now, but we are not seeing it. Therefore, we are making ourselves more and more miserable. But when we start associating more and more with the holy name, gradually the so-called ambition starts vanishing. After all, you're not going to take anything with you from this world. So why are you wasting precious time in acquiring something which is just so temporary? Really, in this human life, one has to perfect the chanting of holy names actually. Otherwise, one will come to a horrible end. And especially dying in the age of Kali, if one is not purified, one never knows where birth will take place. One will never know. When Krishna appeared on earth, when he was in Dwaraka, we hear the story of prostitutes coming to see. Now, certainly that is also devotion. But is that a position that anyone wants to be in? Like sometimes when devotees would go to preach, they would see even aboriginals chanting. Yes, so that is also another opportunity to chant the holy name. But if you are neglectful of devotional service in this life, that is possibly a type of destination that you will attain in the next birth. You will get an opportunity to chant, but either as in the body of an aborigine or a prostitute or some homeless man. So why should you take such a chance? Because in Kali Yuga, invariably we are committing so many sinful activities. Prabhupada says, we therefore advise our disciples to strictly follow the regulative principles. Otherwise, the most important movement for upliftment of humanity will be hampered due to dissension among its members. So why are we following this? So those who are serious about pushing forward this Krishna consciousness movement should remember this and strictly follow the regulative principles so that their minds will not be disturbed. It's for our own benefit. It's not that Krishna is enjoying something out of this or Prabhupada is enjoying it. It is for our own benefit. Take it or leave it. So if we don't take this seriously, Krishna is not obliged to help us. Krishna, like Prabhupada says, Krishna is not obliged to you. Krishna doesn't need anything from you. Whatever you're doing is for your own benefit. Text 36. Kvachit kshina dhanaha shayasana shanadya upabhoga vihino yavad.
Kvachit Krishna Anam Savya Vanasa Upa Koga Java Yavat.
Apratilabdha manoratho pagata dane avasita matis tatastato avamana dini janad abhilabhate.
Aparati labdha no ratho adakta dane avista matis tatas tato avamanani anad abhilabdate.
May I read through the
Yes, please.
translation? Sometimes, having no money, the conditioned soul does not get sufficient accommodations. Sometimes he doesn't even have a place to sit, nor does he have the other necessities. In other words, he falls into scarcity, and at that time, when he is unable to secure the necessities by fair means, he decides to seize the property of others unfairly. When he cannot get the things he wants, he simply receives insults from the others and thus becomes very morose. Purport. It is said that necessity knows no law. When the conditioned soul needs money to acquire life's bare necessities, he adopts any means. He begs, borrows, or steals. Instead of receiving these things, he is insulted and chastised. Unless one is very well organized, one cannot accumulate riches by unfair means. Even if one acquires riches by unfair means, he cannot avoid punishment and insult from the government or the general populace. There are many instances of important peoples embezzling money, getting caught, and being put in prison. One may be able to avoid the punishment of prison, but one cannot avoid the punishment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who works through the agency of material nature. This is described in Bhagavad Gita 7.14. Daivi hesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Nature is very cruel. She does not excuse anyone. When people do not care for nature, they commit all kinds of sinful activities and consequently they have to suffer. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam. Krishna is saying this material nature is acting under my instructions. And this material nature is very meticulous. When a train is coming down the track, the train has no compassion for anyone who's foolish enough to go near the tracks. Material nature is also like an express train running down. And material nature works mathematically. It's very mathematical, it's precise. One may cheat somebody and think, okay, I've gotten away with it. But nature is observing. Nature will punish exactly. Nature is very specific in punishment. Krishna is saying, Daivi eshu gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. So nature is Daivi eshu gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Very difficult. Duratyaya. It's practically impossible to get out of material nature. It's extremely strict. So even a small mistake, the story that comes of that great sage who was punished by the king. So he asks Yamraj, why was I punished? So the Yamraj says that when you were a kid, you were killing small insects by piercing them with sticks. So therefore now you have to be also killed by being, you have to also be punished by being pierced with a stick. So material nature acts in that way. It's very precise. One may escape this. One may think, okay, I'm doing illicit sex, hiding in a corner. Yes, you may hide in the corner, but Paramatma is within the heart. Sarvasya chaham hriti sannivishto. Krishna is saying, the sun and the moon are my eyes. In the 11th chapter of Gita, he is explaining. 9th chapter, he is explaining. Sun and moon are the eyes of the Lord. So, the sun and moon, I mean, there is daylight. All the time daylight is watching. Then the wind is witness. So, there is air. Everyone is breathing air. So, that is also one witness. And then, biggest of all, Paramatma is sitting within the heart. He knows even those desires which have not yet manifested. Brahmyami sarva bhutana yantrarvani maya. Krishna is saying, so Brahmyami sarva bhutani. So all the living entities are being directed by Paramatma. Paramatma says, oh, you like eating meat? Okay, let me guide you up to a place where you get meat. Or you want illicit sex? Okay, let me make arrangements for you. So Paramatma is just guiding us in that way. Because he knows this is our desire. And then when nature punishes us, then we'll learn our lesson. So one may try very hard. So actually, then who's this thief? So in 3rd chapter of Gita, Krishna is explaining this. Anyone who enjoys material nature without offering it back to the demigods and the Supreme Lord is actually a thief. So anyone who does not believe in God, who's an atheist, is actually a thief, and he will suffer for such activities. Text 37. Evam vitya vyatishanga vivruddha vairanu bandho api purva vasanaya mitha udvahatya athapavahati.
Evam vittaha jatin vibuddham vara anu api vasno ya mitaha uditya athapati. Very true. Hare Krishna. Translation by Sri Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Although people may be enemies, in order to fulfill their desires again and again, they sometimes get married. Unfortunately, these marriages do not last very long, and the people involved are separated again by divorce or other means. Purport. As stated previously, every conditioned soul has the propensity to cheat. Even in marriage, everywhere in this material world, one conditioned soul is envious of another. For the time being, people may remain friends, but eventually they become enemies again and fight over money. Sometimes they marry and then separate by divorce or other means. On the whole, unity is never permanent. Due to the cheating propensity, both parties always remain envious. Even in Krishna consciousness, separation and enmity take place due to the prominence of material propensities. Thank you, Prabhu.
So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is explaining the nature of happiness in this material world. So different modes of nature and different kinds of happiness. So see, material world means Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Trigunnya Bhavarjana. The 3 gunas, they are acting in the material world. This material world, goodness, passion, and ignorance, and always these 3 mix. The mixture of 3 is always acting on the living entity. All activities taking place are due to the mode of passion. And then because of activity, one becomes tired and then falls into ignorance. In this way, floating in the 3 modes of ignorance, the living entity acquires a very strong false ego. Aham, I am. And in this false ego, he considers this to be mine, that to be not mine, and in this way he suffers. So you see, in this world, people talk of love and other things, but all that is nonsense. This is all just born out of mode of passion, a desire to enjoy the senses. If I am enjoying my senses, there is bound to come a time when you will become an obstruction in that sense enjoyment. And that will become a reason for enmity. Actually, everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. Ishavasyam idam sarvam So everything belongs to the Supreme Lord, but mistakenly we think that this is ours, and therefore we become envious of others. So the so-called happiness of this world, this is also arising just out of sense perception. Here in the 38th verse of the 18th chapter, Krishna is explaining Vishayendriya samyoga yattad agre amrutopamam pariname visham eva tat sukham rajasam smritam. That happiness which is derived from the contact of the senses with their objects, and which appears like nectar at first but poison at the end, is said to be of the nature of passion. A young man and a young woman meet, and the senses drive the young man to see her, to touch her, and to have sexual intercourse. In the beginning, this may be very pleasing to the senses, but at the end or after some time, it becomes just like poison. They are separated or there is divorce. There is lamentation, there is sorrow, etc. Such happiness is always in the mode of passion. Happiness derived from the combination of the senses and the sense objects is always a cause of distress and should be avoided by all means. So, as soon, dhyayato vishayana pumsha sangasteshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kama. So when senses come in contact with their objects, then the attachment starts. So avoid that contact. In the very beginning, Krishna is explaining the 3rd chapter of Gita. In the very beginning, slay this enemy of the knowledge, lust. Now we slay this enemy of the soul, lust, by the sword of knowledge. So knowledge, study Bhagavad Gita, study Bhagavatam. Don't be lazy in this matter. Now, people take so much effort to study engineering, medicine, law, and management, and so many things. And even at the age of 35, 40, they're doing this course, that course. But when it comes to Bhagavad Gita, every single one is lazy. Oh, Prabhu, there is no time. Oh, Prabhu, my job. Oh, Prabhu, my family. You can give so many excuses. It doesn't matter. Yamraj will come in due course of time. You can't give any excuses to him. This Bhagavad Gita is actually just the very beginning of our philosophy. Then comes Srimad Bhagavatam, then Chaitanya Charitamrita, and there is so much of Tattva Siddhanta to be understood. Great sages have spent so much time. Lomash Rishi was standing for kalpas on the banks of Saraswati, just performing, just remembering the Supreme Lord, because he thought that even a life of many kalpas is actually insufficient to purify oneself of material influence. So just chanting of just 1-2 hours here and there and some reading here and there is certainly completely inadequate. Because this will not, within our heart, if there is no desire to become liberated from this material nature, we will never become liberated. Maya will present dazzling sceneries to us and we'll become more and more attracted. So now here Prabhupada is mentioning that in this way we see that when material desires come, even in a devotional society, there is bound to become some kind of enmity. So due to cheating propensity, both parties always remain envious. Even in Krishna consciousness, separation and enmity take place due to the prominence of material propensities. In fact, around 70s and 80s, the divorce rate in ISKCON was higher than the maintainers. Devotees are so lusty. They were living together, just husband and wife were changing like merry-go-round. Nobody knew whose husband was whose wife and whose wife would be whose husband and all that. Some madness was going on. So we have to be very careful. Bhakti means we are giving up material nature, not that we are embracing it more and more. Bhakti does not mean that we are doing mundane activities with Hare Krishna in our mouth. No, we have to purify our heart. We have to get rid of these materialistic misconceptions. Otherwise, there will be no difference. Bahu janma yadi kare shravana kirtan kabhu ta na pave Krishna pade premtam. No, if we are going to attain love of Krishna, it has to be in this life, or it will be never, because Maya will present something better. In this life, you are attached to your wife, to your child, or your husband. In the next birth, it will be even better, because you have done some devotional service. In this life, if you have a wife from Maharashtra, Punjab, or some place, next birth your wife will be from Swargalok. What are you going to do then? In this life, you're finding it difficult to give up your wife. In the next birth, she'll be an Apsara. And in all the lives, cruel nature will come and take you and your wife away. This is how nature works. So in this very birth, we have to practice detachment and renunciation. When Arjun says, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramati balvadranam, tasyaham nigraham manye vayuriv sudushkaram. So Krishna advises him, he says, by detachment and practice. Krishna is not saying, okay, Arjun, you are my friend, I'll just do something for you. No. Krishna is saying, my dear Arjun, detachment and practice. So detachment practice that we have to do. No one else can do that for us. We have to love Krishna. Krishna loves us. That is, of that there is no doubt. That's why he's sustaining us even in this miserable condition. But we have to practice that love of God. Otherwise, we will never attain love of God. Because we are coming in contact with material nature all the time, but we are not maintaining contact with Krishna. So therefore, Krishna, we will never be able to develop any attachment for Krishna. First there is sadhu sang, then comes asakti, then comes sadhu sang, then comes ruchi, then will come asakti. So if we maintain just material attachments, my job, my profession, my family, then Krishna will never be found. Never. In no birth will ever find Krishna. And gradually, as we go on doing punya, we will get better and better material facilities, and we'll keep forgetting Krishna more and more. Yes, so there is one question here. Slowly your desires will start to diminish, but desires you aren't diminishing. So balance is how can that be handled? Practice, you chant more. I mean, desires are not like material nature is not forcing herself upon you. You are embracing the material nature. If there's a beautiful car, beautiful house, you have to give up that attachment. Otherwise, they will be anyway taken away from you. And how do you practice detachment? You can't just leave your home and run away to the forest. I mean, if you can do that, that's very good. But what you need to do is you need to associate with sadhus more. Do more devotional service. You're spending so much time in taking care of your family, your house, your profession. Spend some time and start taking care of devotees. Take up some voluntary sevas. Take some voluntary pain in the service of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says that 6 months is enough to realize whether one is really wanting to serve Krishna or not. So, if you're feeling that material nature is disturbing too much, you take up some service. Take a regular service. Okay, this is something I have to do. And then do that service. When we are chanting, when we are reading, we are doing it for ourselves. So try to help others. There are so many others who are struggling in bhakti. Make some program and try to help others. Otherwise, these material desires will gradually drown us out completely. When you are engaged in service 24 hours, where is the time for desires? Haridas Thakur, Maya Devi came to tempt him. And what did Haridas Thakur say and do? He told her to wait. He said, okay, as soon as I finish my chanting, I'll associate with you. And that chanting never got over. So he was constantly engaged in devotional service. Therefore, he had no opportunity to fall down. That's how we should see the devotional process. Because we are passionate people. So engage that passion in the service of the Lord 24 hours. That's the only way. There's no other way. Okay. So we stop here today. Thank you very much, everyone. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Krishna.
Right.
Bharat Pranam.
Krishna, thank you.